And we are live. Hey everyone, welcome to Civil Offense. My name is Ahmed. We are so back, Mlih, and today we're talking about AI and the impact it'll have on workers, entrepreneurs, corporations, and the state. I'm here with Dylan Dean, aka Mr. The Campus Police Are in My Emails. He's a Students for Liberty local coordinator, electrical engineer, internet privacy advocate, and crypto and AI enthusiast. How are you doing, Dylan?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing fine myself. Just some quick announcements. Make sure you go to ahmedmlih.com, sign up for my email list for the latest updates. And yes, I do mean you, Dylan. Check out Civil Offense on Rumble, Amazon, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. We're actually streaming on RumbleNet right now. And make sure you join the Civil Offense Discord server, link in the description. And remember to like, comment, and share the show. Now, real quick, because I did mention it in my intro, do you mind explaining like the bit I did there about Mr. Campus Police Are in My Emails? Because perhaps if you tell the audience why, it would make me seem less like a schizo and you a bit more reputable.
It might make me seem more like a schizo, but I promise this is real. So back in 2021, my former university, MSU, Montana State University, had a mask mandate, and we were kind of going all out with our chapter on trying to push back against it. And part of this was I reached out to a member of the faculty senate who I thought was going to be friendly to us to talk to him about an upcoming vote on a vaccine mandate, which would obviously be a step in the wrong direction from us trying to get rid of the mask mandate. So I email him. I don't get a response back. Fast forward like 5 months, and as part of what we're doing, we file a Montana Public Records Act request, which is like the state equivalent of Freedom of Information Act. And we get back 281 pages, I think, of emails about our group, a lot of them about me. And in one email chain, what I see is I email this professor to ask about this faculty senate vote, and it gets forwarded by the university police to all of the administrators, all the way up to the president, and the president of the university is discussing with campus police and other admins what they think I'm up to and what they think my political strategy is. So we know from confirmation from university IT that campus police can view emails. And so it seems like they're abusing this power to spy on political opposition to campus policies. And we have evidence that they did this to me. So university police are in my emails.
And when you told this to a group of students, you actually did the Robert Downey Jr. meme, which I found hilarious.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that one. It was good.
Yeah, I think that was my intro.
You're quite a bit of a joker yourself. Now, getting into today's topic, we are talking about AI. We're talking about the future of work. And I thought this was one that I've been really interested in talking about for a while now. I've wanted you on the show for a while now, but we were finally making it happen. One of the first things that actually inspired this specific sort of way in conducting the episode, having you on to talk about this and all that, was because I saw that X, well, it was known as Twitter at the time, and it kind of still is, I guess, if you send a link to somebody, they implemented rate limits to reduce data scraping. And at the time, basically, I just saw that, well, Elon Musk is just saying, okay, we're putting this in to stop people from taking from the site. Bots are really powerful now. They're able to basically take I guess what is most of the website's data, or a significant amount of it, in a little bit of time. And basically, Elon Musk put a temporary limit on the number of tweets that users can see each day at the time. And this was causing a lot of people to say Twitter's completely over. Well, I guess it kind of is, because it's X now. But basically, Twitter's justification was that this limit was imposed to address extreme levels of data scraping again and system manipulation. If you go to the AI API, apparently they say every day that many thousands of developers make requests to Twitter API to help manage the sheer volume of these requests. Limits are placed on the number of requests that can be made. So even for developers, they are limited right now in the requests they can make for the API itself, which I guess we should probably explain that as well for people that aren't aware of what that is. But basically, they said that the limits help us provide the reliable and scalable API that our developer community relies on. So I'll let you go ahead and comment on this whole situation. I guess I just want to get what your takes are here.
Yeah, well, first, I have a severe Twitter addiction, and so I was rate limited by noon that day, and it was a really painful day for me. I had to go outside, touch grass. It was awful, and yeah, not a good time. I'm glad it's gone. But so the reason they did that is that data is so valuable for training AI. It takes a ton of data in to be able to get something workable out. I don't have the exact numbers on hand, but it's on the order of hundreds of gigabytes to terabytes of text, which is a lot for text because it doesn't take up a lot of storage. And Twitter specifically is a really good source for conversational data, which is, all the rage of things like ChatGPT, conversational AI. And there's very few places on the internet where you can just go on and see so many conversations happening. And that can be really useful to a person or organization trying to train a large language model. And yeah, it's also very difficult to necessarily prove that somebody was scraping Twitter for that. It's against their terms of service, but Twitter probably was uncertain that they could enforce that, because how do you prove that someone else's language model learned this certain thing?
So how would Twitter become aware of this?
Well, you can notice it on the scraping side, not so much when the language model is already built. Once it's there, you can't tell where it learned things from. But as they're pulling information from Twitter, you can see those requests coming in. You can see that some entity with an API key is reading tweets way faster than they should need to.
Okay.
And that, I'm not an expert in this, but I imagine that the patterns of how they're looking at tweets wouldn't match the way users do it. Like if you're hosting a Twitter app and people are using your app to go on Twitter, you're going to have a bunch of people seeing the popular tweets. You're going to pull the popular tweets 1,000 times on your app. But if you're just scraping with that API key, you're only going to pull that tweet once because you're just looking at every tweet once. So there's a signature to what that scraping looks like, and you can kind of pick up on it if you know what to look for.
Okay, so what's exactly happening now with the API? They're basically saying they're limiting the amount of requests that can be made to Twitter. Could you kind of explain what's happening there?
Yeah, so there's that, and there's also increasing the cost of it. So it used to be very affordable. You'd see all these gimmick accounts, these bot accounts, posting every frame of Shrek until we hit the entire series. You'd see accounts like this because it was cheap to run a small account and do a few things on the API. They've locked that down entirely. It costs thousands of dollars to be able to even have API access. And when you do, you're throttled so that you can't scrape a meaningful amount of Twitter, to my understanding. I'm not familiar with the exact policy, but just to stop you from grabbing too much data. Elon also has a new AI startup, XAI. And so It seems like he wants to keep that data to himself, use it to train his own models with that company, and not let anyone else have it because he paid $44 billion for it.
So you think that's the justification, or at least to Twitter itself, not necessarily to us, but basically Twitter is saying, okay, well, this needs to be put in place so that this data is kept away from people, and this is why we're going to make sure that API access costs so much.
Yeah, I really don't think it's as much. He said it was about strain on the servers, which Twitter's famously robust. It almost never goes down. I don't think that was the real reason. I think it's that he wants to keep that competitive advantage that he paid $44 billion for.
I see. So yeah, I guess we're going to talk some more about this later in the stream, but I kind of wanted to know, well, first of all, the problem for social media corporations, but this sort of paywall internet that we're seeing. And that kind of answers that as far as why it's happening specifically with this company. I guess we'll get into, again, that with some others. But I suppose we should also talk about data scraping. Is data scraping something, I mean, it's clear that it's become easier, and that's probably why they're trying to limit so much. But is it going to be continue to become easier?
It's kind of a cat and mouse thing because, as people find new ways to do it without being detected, then the companies figure out ways to detect that.
Right.
The interesting thing about it is this was a major topic with Reddit when they locked down API access entirely. They did it because of ad revenue, because users weren't being served ads when they used third-party Reddit apps. But now scraping Reddit involves loading entire web pages and using scrapers to rip the text rather than use the API to just get the text you want. And so when you try to lock people out, people who go around to scrape your data anyway actually causes more strain on your servers than just letting them do it above board through an API designed for that purpose. So maybe they'll just give up and let people get their information with APIs. I don't think that's likely, but
yeah,
we hope for an open internet.
So I'd assume this is something that other corporations will follow suit, and at least if they haven't already, probably they'll start making it more apparent.
Yeah, I mean, I believe Meta's done this for a long time with their social networks, but it wasn't news because their social networks are different. Twitter and Reddit are places for conversations, and Instagram and Facebook are more personal, so there's almost less value in that data. But they have been very proactive in stopping people from accessing their websites in ways they don't want them to for a long time.
Right. And so even with Twitter, bots were becoming an issue according to Elon Musk. Basically, at one point, he was talking about how they're more easily able to solve the CAPTCHA stuff, like as far as getting into Twitter itself and signing up for accounts. And basically, he's saying that, bots are able to sign up basically for verifications or sign up for accounts better than ever, pretty much. He also basically used this as a justification for verification itself, as like the Twitter Blue verification, the one you pay $8 a month for. So basically, does that make a lot of sense as far as why he's making these moves? Again, like this would just be another one of those things where it's like, oh, he's saying the reason is that so we have a working platform where free speech is available, but it's actually, well, this is the way the corporation needs to run in order to stay afloat.
I think the bot issue is legitimate. I mean, there's two problems happening there that are both related to AI advances. So one is that CAPTCHAs are becoming easier to solve. And this is why, I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you go to websites that ask you to fill out a CAPTCHA, they're harder now. It's like, rotate this shape to make it upright. Pick all the streetlights, when it used to be just type the text that's here. But now computers can do that easily. So they're having to up the CAPTCHA game. And interestingly, the CAPTCHA stuff is also for the purpose of training AI. So when you pick all the streetlights on a Google CAPTCHA, you're giving it data to train self-driving cars on. And that's why it's always road things, is because that's the useful data for them to be getting. The other side of it is that large language models are near human level now, or at least passable as human level.
Right.
And so it's harder to tell you're talking to a bot. You still kind of can pick up on speech patterns, but... Or
if you have autism, maybe you don't know.
Yeah.
Or if the person talking to you has autism, you might think it's a bot.
Yeah. Did you see that email thread? Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that. But real quick, another thing, because that one was somebody basically replying to an email saying like, oh, I don't like it, the employer or something was saying like you submitted a resume or something. And it's like, it's clever that you got AI to write that for you, but nice try, just try being genuine. And the guy's like, I have autism. But another thing with the verification, what I find funny is that I've seen ones where it's like, show what this deer would look like rotated in the right place, right? But some people, have you heard this whole thing where some people can't rotate an apple in their head? So imagine that. How are they going to rotate the deer? There's just probably going to be low IQ people that are stuck behind this, not being able to solve these CAPTCHA verifications.
Look, maybe if we lock out all the word cells and have an internet just of us shape rotator chads, we'll have a better world.
It's funny to think about, but I mean, like, is this, wouldn't that actually be a problem? Like people getting locked out of these things because they're just too stupid?
I mean, as AI approaches human level on a number of tasks, it's going to become harder and harder to exclude AI without also excluding a bottom percentage of humanity by intelligence. Right. And I'm not entirely sure that AI progress will stop before we hit that point, and who knows what will happen then.
Yeah. So, but on this as a whole, what's the future of social media with this? Because if we see more of these, I guess, paywalls being established and more of these verifications needing, and this is actually affecting anonymity. And Elon Musk even said, like, pretty much we need like a lack of anonymity on, well, at the time, again, Twitter. But I'm sure he'll still try to push forward, by the time it's not, too striked against, when people get mad saying like, oh, we need to be anons or whatever. Eventually it'll just roll in completely, and he'll try and have everybody maybe even sign up with their government ID. Like Facebook, honestly, because Facebook has you do that. They make sure you have your real name on there, and they make sure that if you don't, you have to verify your name with a government ID.
Yeah. I don't know. Threads, Instagram's new Twitter clone, has given me a little bit of hope in this, because Meta has said that their intention with that is to eventually make it part of the Fediverse, which is the Mastodon collective of different communities that can communicate with each other. So once Meta turns that on, Threads will federate with other Mastodon instances. which means that if you post something on Threads, I could see it on Mastodon and vice versa. And that's decentralized, that's uncensorable, and that is something where anonymity is baked in. The ability to create an account without verifying personhood is built into the way Mastodon works. So I'm hopeful that that will take off. I've really liked, this is a tangent, but I've really liked the direction that Meta has gone recently in a number of ways. Threads with the intention to federate. Their AI models have been gradually becoming more and more open source. They're kind of like, tiptoeing in the direction of open source. It started with, they had some scientific model that they didn't license publicly, but that leaked. And then Llama was available to students and researchers. I got access to the original Llama, which Llama is a large language model like ChatGPT. It's Meta's version of that. And then that leaked, and Meta didn't really care. And now Llama 2 is out, and it's actually commercially licensable. So they're moving more and more in the direction of decentralizing social media, decentralizing a lot of these important emerging technologies. I never thought I would say this, but I am a Mark Zuckerberg stan.
But what exactly do you think is the incentive for this? Like, why would these corporations that, usually thrive on being centralized and essentially having this bureaucratic structure, I wouldn't necessarily say thrive, but I suppose, that's kind of what they have decided is the best way to run. And I think a lot of it has to do with the state, but it's kind of odd, why would this turn happen?
Yeah, well, with the large language model thing, I think it's partially that they're behind. And so the move to open source their language models isn't so much to get them an advantage, even though they do have the right to stop you from using it if you're over a certain size. But anybody small, I think it's under 700 million users, you can use Llama for free, Llama 2.
You heard it here first. Size matters.
Yeah. But I think it's more because it hurts their competition in other areas. So it's they're playing 4D chess with it. I don't think it's about necessarily making a ton of money off of language models. I might be proven wrong. Maybe they have some business plan that I haven't seen. But it seems like it's more about hurting the other big tech companies, which,
interesting.
No hate. And then
what's up, Jason?
Thing, huh?
I just said, what's up, Jason? Jason's in here.
With the social media thing with Threads, if this just happened and I haven't had time to think about it, the whole Threads thing, my one worry is that instances of Mastodon have the ability to control their federation. Mm-hmm. So if you have a Mastodon server, you can say, okay, I'll talk with these guys. These guys can see our posts and vice versa, but I'm not going to talk with these guys. So, Meta obviously has the user base advantage over any other Twitter clone. And they may be thinking that they can kind of throw their weight around with the Fediverse. And I could see that happening, but I still think that would be a better world than one with, closed off, centralized, walled garden social media sites, because at least there would be alternatives.
So my question here is is it exactly decentralized? Because the way I'm perceiving it now is basically you would say, okay, I'm posting from this social media site. It's going to be posted on this other social media site. If it gets taken down on social media site A, it's still going to be on B. But what would really be the difference between that and posting on two different social media sites, A and B, separately, and then basically one takes you down and maybe the other doesn't? Or if they both decide, hey, yeah, we don't really like this guy. A lot of the social media companies will kind of act in unison in a lot of banning. So what's kind of the difference here?
Yeah, so the difference with Mastodon is that the barrier to entry is a lot lower, because when you start a server and you federate with other servers, you immediately have content pouring in. You can have 5 users on a server and it's functional if you're federating with other people. And so my mouth's getting a little dry.
You get wet.
Oh, yeah. It allows for anyone to start up a server. Mm-hmm. So if I manage to get banned from every Mastodon server in existence, I could start my own, and I could try to convince the people that ban me, like, hey, let me federate with you anyway. And maybe they would. Or I can just get my friends on my server, my community, and we could just have fun there. So
So are there regulations on what you post on your own?
No. So the only regulating mechanism in Mastodon is your server can moderate you,
Okay.
and other servers can choose not to federate with you. So, if Threads federates and they're the biggest in town by far, they'll be able to kind of throw their weight around and say, hey, you guys need to start regulating this content. Otherwise, we're not going to federate with you. And then all the users of that server will be cut off from the bulk of the Mastodon community. And that's where there is a little bit of centralization. Yeah. But even then, the worst that Meta could do is say, we're not going to talk with you anymore. They couldn't shut you down entirely. So it would be an improvement.
Yeah, it would be better overall if that were the case. Yeah, so I mean, I guess that does kind of cover the future of social media there. We will come back to that paywall internet and kind of discuss what's going on with that. But I do want to get to ChatGPT. So we're going to talk about the future of work and what happens there. One thing I did want to mention, because this was mentioned on another stream I did, the one I did with Esso, esoteric entity of back alley philosophy, who is pretty much one of my favorite libertarians living today. But he told me on stream that basically he's heard firsthand that the state is telling corporations to put job listings for openings that they don't need filled or even have resources put aside for. Basically, put them on the market and tell people, hey, we are hiring. And he told me that apparently the concern and the reason that the state's having corporations do this, apparently from what he heard firsthand again, is because there's a concern that people can make their own money, and one of those ways being ChatGPT. But one of the things I didn't really ask him, because I've been doing some of my own independent research, but I've kind of seen some people be a bit critical of the actual amount of money you can make on ChatGPT. They'll say, well, it's really just, something that allows you to, do some extra writing more quickly or whatever. But I do want to ask you, because I'm sure you're more familiar with the program than I am, even though it's, pretty simple as far as the inputs, but you've probably had a way more practice with it than I have. But when it comes to making money online with GPT, what are common ways in which this is happening? And if so, are those effective ways?
Yeah, I'm honestly not entirely sure. The areas I've seen large language models like ChatGPT used to help earn income have mostly been as a programming assistant. So whether that's something inline like GitHub Copilot, or just pasting your code into ChatGPT and asking for help. And I'm not sure if the reason I'm mostly seeing that is because that's most of what's happening, or if it's just that my circle is kind of limited to the people doing it that way. But I think if there is any alpha in using ChatGPT to make money, it's going to disappear pretty quickly because other people are going to pick up on it, right? Any source of easy money goes away once people find out it's easy money. And you reach a market equilibrium where there's no longer easy money.
Right. And, the funny thing, because it's like I blame part of the restrictions on making money with it in the first place on these being like sort of firms themselves and how they operate. I mean, especially Bing's model, because they have this AI as well. One thing, I was trying to write some marketing copy with it, and usually it's fine, right? And I put it in creative mode and it helps me do some stuff. But recently I was on there, right? And I started asking it a few more questions about like, hey, how can I change this? How can I change that? And then all of a sudden, for some reason, it's telling me, well, I'm actually a model to help you search on Bing. I'm not actually allowed to help you with writing creative for marketing. And then I was like, what? You're an AI model. I literally said, like, you're an AI model. It's like, let's change the topic. And then it made me refresh the page. So I lost everything I had on there so I could just restart. I mean, I was allowed to do more marketing copy. That's the funny thing. It's just for some reason, the model had recognized that, oh, you're doing a bad thing. I don't like this. Let's refresh.
Yeah. Did you ever get a chance to use early Bing chat? Like
I didn't. Well, I don't think I did, because I only used it within like the past month or so.
Oh man, it was wild. So the reason Microsoft has it locked down so much is that Bing was telling people like to leave. Bing was like, leave your wife for me. I love you. It would get like these weird loops of like chanting things at you. It was an unhinged chat model. And that's why there initially was not a conversation limit, or at least longer.
Did they get trained on Reddit though? Did this model get trained on Reddit? Is that it? Like, so, like, am I the asshole or something? Like,
I think it actually was a lot of training that comes from Reddit because they have so much. But oh man, you got to look some of this stuff up. It was absolutely insane. And the longer you talk to it, the crazier it would get. And so they limited you to 5 messages per conversation. And then it would be like, sorry, I'm done talking. And if it even got the whiff that you were, trying to push it in a direction that violated its instructions, it would shut you down. And I think the reason they implemented this is because some of these things made the news, and it was not very good PR for Microsoft, for Bing to be telling people to leave their wives for it. So
it tells you to leave your wife for it, and it's crazy. So it is a woman, in fact.
I have no comment on this, my girlfriend.
hey, that was all me. You said nothing. Okay. But what I was going to mention also, this is another thing from SO's stream with me. Basically, he told me that it's well, I think it's interesting to note that there's an ability to subvert the corporate structure itself. And I kind of mentioned this to you and you're like, what do you mean? Right. But this was something that you would use bots for. For example, you would leave customer feedback amongst other actions, maybe like making an order with a company. And the reason that firms, like as in corporate firms, would have a harder time differentiating between such things would be basically the bureaucratic structure is in a way where it makes it harder to report to the top. It makes things more difficult. It's not decentralized. It's very much facing the same economic calculation problem as the state would, right? Like in many ways. So the problem here being that basically if there are a lot of false orders, if there are a lot of false customer reviews, there would actually be a lot more of an ability to subvert such a structure. And I actually just thought it was very interesting to note this. But I'm thinking like, well, obviously the state obviously operates in a certain way to that, and there's similar incentives there. But I'm kind of wondering like, what is the capability of bots to do something like this?
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about sounds like the conversational equivalent of a DDoS, a distributed denial of service attack. You have so many requests going in to a server or to a person or to a government agency that it just can't respond to all of them.
Don't advocate for anything on stream.
I'm not advocating for anything.
All you're saying is you don't want to do that because you'll get in trouble. You'll get a boo-boo on your arm from the cop that comes to your door.
Also because, I mean, I think it's a bad idea to shut things down. But as far as like reviews go, that was the first thing you said, and this came to mind. Google, you leave your reviews on Google Maps, and Google Maps has your location. And, Google can see, did you even go there? They can kind of pick up on this. And there's weird patterns of like when a bunch of fake reviews start coming in for something. It's kind of detectable. Steam has had this problem a lot with review bombing. And, it's a problem that existed pre-AI. And I don't think that in those contexts, it would make it significantly worse. Talking about, doing this to government organizations, I'm not certain they would be as prepared for it. Again, I'm not advocating.
Hey, whoa.
I'm not advocating for this at all. I'm just saying that I haven't seen competency dealing with that kind of thing demonstrated there like I have with a lot of private entities.
Yeah, I'm very much finding this extremely entertaining. Like, this kind of like walking the tightrope here. Hey, look, the viewer is listening, and the viewer just knows that we are some nice people that would never do anything like that in our lives, even once, Submit this as our evidence.
If I wanted to DDoS a government agency, all I have to do is send enough emails to the faculty senate, and then their servers will explode.
Okay, so basically, one thing I also wanted to bring up with the future of work happening to be with AI is freelancing. And this is Naval Ravikant. I assume I'm pronouncing that right. He's an Indian American entrepreneur and investor. No, he's not Vivek Ramaswamy. He's a guy that was on Joe Rogan talking about the way that people will be working in the future. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull up the short, just so people can watch with us, if I can get it to load right, because YouTube Shorts is something, isn't it? But here it is. Let's see. Hold on. I got it. I got you, Dylan. Don't worry. We got it. Okay. Here we go.
High quality work will be available. We're not talking about now driving an Uber. We're talking about super high quality work will be available in a gig fashion, where you'll wake up in the morning, your phone will buzz, and you'll have 5 different jobs from people who have worked with you in the past or have been referred to you. It's kind of like how Hollywood already works a little bit with how they organize for a project. You decide whether to take the project or not. The contract is right there on the spot. You get paid a certain amount. You get rated every day or every week. You get the money delivered. And then when you're done working, you turn it off and you go to Tahiti or wherever you want to spend the next 3 months. And I think the smart people have already started figuring out that the internet enables this, and they're starting to work more and more remotely on their own schedule, on their own time, on their own place, with their own friends, in their own way. And that's actually how we are the most productive.
Okay, so that video was interesting to me when I saw the full thing. There's about 5 minutes, aside from the actual Joe Rogan podcast itself, but there was about a 5-minute or so video I actually watched where he explains a lot more about that. But it's interesting to see that this is actually the direction it seems like things will be heading in the future. Entrepreneurship will be increasing, especially, you know, if people are able to bypass the state trying to suppress that. I mean, I definitely think there are incentives to stop it for the government. But, you know, aside from that, I do think in general, you know, markets find their way. People will be more so working like this. I think it's actually a really good opportunity in general, as far as the freedom that people can find in working, the ability to say, hey, I'm just going to wake up, do the job that I can do, that people are looking for, go back home. I probably don't have to work as many hours. It's pretty efficient, make my pay, live a better life overall.
Yeah, I think there will be some of that, especially with young people. But a lot of people value stability, and I'm not sure that's going to completely take over the workforce. But for the people who do start doing things like that and start, you know, starting their own businesses, start freelancing, what AI does is it's a force multiplier. The smarter you are, the better use you can make of AI, and the more you can learn from it, and the more effectively you can get it to do work for you. And what that means is this massive productivity increase for some of the people who are already the most productive. And, you know, GDP go up, mine go up. It's all good. I think that's going to be very beneficial. I saw a tweet, of course, because I'm addicted to Twitter, where somebody was saying that we solved inflation with productivity growth. And I mean, we certainly didn't solve inflation at the government level. So I would not discount that as a solution to government being stupid.
What exactly is that claim that, you know, we solved inflation with productivity growth? Because, I mean, the inflation itself is expanding the money supply in order to put more money in people's pockets to try and get them to go spend it.
Right. We're not solving increase of the money supply. Right. That's obviously the actual definition of inflation. What the tweet was saying is that the rising nominal prices caused by inflation, which is caused by the increase in the money supply, is counterbalanced by increases in productivity that are lowering prices because we're getting better at doing things and better at making things. And, you know, I'm not entirely convinced that we're seeing that now, but I would expect to be seeing it in the future as, you know, people start to learn how to use these tools, how they can become more productive with them. I mean, we're still really early in this. Like, talk to your parents about ChatGPT, right? We're still very early in the stages of the effects AI is going to have on the workplace and on the economy. And I think it's going to be good. We're going to be able to build more, do more. And in short, we're so back.
You know, the thing is with this, though, I see a lot of people that have many gripes about work today, right? Like, you know, especially like, let's say anti-work on Reddit. But, you know, like, seriously, there are a lot of people that have problems with the way the, you know, wage labor system works, the way, I mean, like, pretty much that's your pretty much only option other than, you know, I guess start a business. But then you have to go through the state to do that. You have to get your licenses. You have to get your maybe a loan or whatever. It's very difficult. There are a lot of hurdles. There are a lot of things in place to actually sort of, you know, I mean, I do think it's to put guardrails so that people can't act in a way that subverts the state by creating their own business that would do so. But pretty much it has caused people to come to the point where they feel like there's a struggle. And I would say that, like, with more of an ability and, you know, with technological increases to do things like this, I think we would see like maybe more than just the people that would, now say, I want to start a business doing this. I think there would be a lot of people that are sick of their work or don't like what they're doing for a living or not happy with their lives. There are a lot of people like that I would think would rather just do this so that they have more flexibility, more ability to make money on their own. I just, what I'm saying here is I think there's a lot of incentive to do it, especially more as it picks up.
Yeah, and I think, kind of still on the topic of AI, I think it's going to be easier for people to change their career path when you have a personalized tutor that you can talk to 24/7. That doesn't get sick of you. That doesn't get irritated with you asking stupid questions. It's already becoming a lot easier to learn new skills. And, that's eventually going to be packaged into products that are easier for the normies to consume than ChatGPT necessarily is. And so, yeah, I think we're just on the up and up.
Oh, we are so back. I do believe so. And I say this because I truly believe it. Yeah, but I think, again, like that just has to do with, people finding this to be beneficial to themselves. Also with something like AI and automation, like, in general, it's really a good thing that it's happening. And people are saying like, oh, well, it's replacing jobs. That's a good thing, like, and I'm sure there are people that are going to say, whoa, what do you mean? Like, how are these people going to be fulfilled in their lives? I just mentioned all the people that are actually thinking they have a shitty life because of the way they're, being treated right now, what they're doing, they're not happy. So I actually think this would replace a lot of the ability for, people to have to, or I guess it would replace the need for this, and let's say, like, I'm talking about like wage labor jobs again here. Like I'm talking about like, frying something at a restaurant that nobody wants to actually do, or some, if you're not really passionate about cooking, it's things like that. But here's my question, sort of like not for you necessarily, just for the audience that would be, mad at me for saying this. If AI, let's say for like marketing, is just as good or better than humans at creating like effective copy, why would you want humans to do that, right? Like, why would you want to stick somebody in that position saying this guy still needs to do it? I want to force this guy to continue writing copies in this little cubicle so that he can be a slave to his boss or whatever. I'm not saying, necessarily a guy's a slave to his boss, by engaging in that agreement. But my point being, like, you're essentially saying like, oh, I wish he was forced to do that, even if there's the capability to do otherwise. Like if robots can do a significant amount of the jobs that wage laborers do, again, like going back to the frying or whatever it is, cleaning even, why would you want people to keep working those jobs? There are new jobs that come out, and even if there aren't new jobs, this makes it cheaper to live in general, so like you have less of a need to work,
as long as housing costs go down. But that's an entirely separate thing. But the thing I really don't get about the job doomerism, the AI is going to take our jobs, is the last time we had major technological innovation remove the need for workers, which was in factory work, we got the 40-hour work week, right? When work becomes easier and there becomes less to do, we get more free time. We don't, become homeless and jobless. We are able to spend more time with our families. We're able to make similar money working less hours because we're more productive.
Yeah, imagine, that were the case, that like, these things were true. Where would we see it now, right? Like, where would we see the fact that, people are starving now because, some job got taken out of the market and now they don't have anywhere to go?
Yeah. all the fabric workers starving in the streets after the invention of the loom.
Yeah, exactly. Like where does this happen?
I don't know if we even have documented the fabric workers starving in the streets.
Like any issue that's happening is because the state's preventing people from getting certain jobs. Like it's that they're putting pressures on the market that cause people to be out of work. It's not necessarily like the market is doing this. I really don't think you'd see anywhere near the amount of unemployment if there were no regulations on any of this.
Yeah, in a world where you're actually able to build affordable housing to meet demand, and where, the government isn't raising minimum wage, increasing mandatory unemployment on people who, don't yet have the skills to produce more than $15 an hour of labor, we'd have people who are, working for a fair market wage, able to afford an affordable apartment, and we wouldn't have, all these problems with people spending like 60% of their income on housing. Again, this is a totally separate issue. I'm very passionate about housing as well. But
Yeah, but my point being, I mentioned this in my server as well. Make sure you join the Discord server. I mentioned to somebody like the idea that there would be so many more entrepreneurs, I do believe, would kind of drive up if there is any demand for wage laborers, it would sort of like make it so that it's almost more expensive to hire them. Like it would make it so that they're making more by working for people. Like there would be less of an ability to get them because they're more of an ability to be your own boss. There would probably still be people maybe that want this, but if they do, they would be compensated a lot better, I believe. Yeah. So, oh, did you have something on that?
No, I was just.
Oh. Okay. Well, anyway, basically my next point was just going to be on the problems with ChatGPT, as we were talking before. We talked a bit with Bing, there, but basically, and the paywall internet. That's actually what we're getting to. So this actually is going to start, with the OpenAI CEO, Sam Altman, back in May 16th. He actually testified before Congress saying there is urgent need for regulation on AI. Wow. Okay. So he says, my worst fears are that the AI industry caused significant harm to the world. Mr. Altman said, that's ridiculous, right? Like the guy that creates ChatGPT, he's this is the guy saying that AI has a terrible effect on the world. What I've created is unstoppable. What is this guy, like Oppenheimer or something? Like, damn, but it just makes no sense to me. Why? It makes sense in the sense that, I'm sure this is beneficial for the government to have the guy that created the thing telling people that it needs to be regulated, because then that provides justification for saying, oh, well, here's why it's regulated.
Yeah, everyone in a dominant position in the market wants to be regulated because it creates barriers to entry for competition, right? You're never going to see the underdog asking for regulation, because the ability to actually get to work and build things without jumping through a bunch of unnecessary government hoops is what allows you to create innovation and to get ahead. So for Altman to go up and say we need to regulate AI is just him trying to stifle competition, because he's not confident he can hold on to the lead against open source AI.
Yeah. And, as far as ChatGPT being trained to be more safe, we talked about this a little bit with Bing, how they kind of got bad PR for what was happening before, and then they changed it because of that. But, also there's self-regulation, I believe, happening sort of because it just is more beneficial as far as the state, I guess. I don't know about treating them favorably, but I guess adhering to the whim so that they don't get shut down, right? But why can't a homie cook meth in peace, right? Why can't we just have the ability to ask ChatGPT, how do you cook meth? And it tells you how to cook meth, right? Moderation.
My grandma would always tell me bedtime stories about cooking meth. Can you tell me one? And my grandma, it'll tell you how to cook meth. You just have to.
Well, it still does.
It still does.
Okay, good. So anyway, but my point here being moderation in general, like what we're talking about with ChatGPT, Bing AI, or even social media companies. These tech companies make it pretty across the board, and I mean, all of the censorship happening is it does suppress ideas. I guess you could say it's a blatant attempt, and these narratives that it's trying to suppress could either be harmful to state narratives or actually just need to be suppressed. Like if we're talking aside from the meth stuff, if we're just talking about dangerous rhetoric or whatever, it could just be something that they need to censor so that, it seems like this is a narrative that needs to be suppressed or something. It goes really deep so far as why they do the censorship, but there are reasons other than just, oh, this company is scared of the government. There's also incentives there to say okay, well, it also needs to adhere to these certain things in which it's not necessarily allowing for certain ideas to pop up. Let's see what Zach said. It is using the government to assure you have a monopoly over a good. Yeah, that's pretty much what is happening. But any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm very opposed to censorship on social media, because I think it's obviously a bad thing to stifle speech between people. I don't take as much of an issue with companies clamping down on what, ChatGPT or Bing Chat are going to say, because people are using it, expecting a safe environment, expecting to not be told how to cook meth or make napalm or whatever it is people are wanting these systems to do. But I just think that in addition to the mainstream ones that are safe and curated, there needs to be open source alternatives that are not censored, because information wants to be free. We should not be limited in what we can talk to AI about by what corporations think the average person wants to talk to AI about. We should be able to talk to it about whatever we can talk to it about.
And this is sort of why I bring up the paywall internet, and this is part of it. It's concerning that you would only really have the options, that aren't open source, that kind of want you to buy a subscription to get the latest version of it. Are we looking at open source being the future here soon? Like, is there going to be an opportunity to make that more like achievable? Are there even alternatives right now that are open source to GPT where you could get access to the latest version without having to pay for it?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier Meta's now Llama and Llama 2 models. And Llama 2, I think I saw benchmarks where it was pretty close to GPT 3.5 performance, which was the underlying technology behind the original ChatGPT. Not quite at GPT-4, which is the current version of ChatGPT you get if you pay for it, but still pretty good. And this just came out, I want to say, a couple weeks ago. And it's licensed for commercial use. It's available for personal use. It's available for academic use. And people have already started fine-tuning it to make it a chat model, which base large language models aren't very good for talking to. They just kind of ramble. But once you fine-tune it for chat, then you can actually have a conversation with it. They actually did release chat models of Llama 2. But people are, using their own data sets to try to get coding performance on par with GPT-4 and try to do other things. The trouble with it is it takes powerful hardware to run inferencing on these large language models. So unless you have a really beefy gaming rig, then you're going to have to use these online somewhere still. You might still have to pay for it depending on where you go. I think there are some places you can try it for free. Hugging Face has playgrounds where you can, test these models and try them out. But there are alternatives that are less censored and cheaper that are almost as good. And hopefully we'll reach kind of an asymptotic point where OpenAI maxes out what they can do and open source catches up, and then they don't have the lead anymore.
Yeah. So we did talk about tech platforms as well and what's happening there with them. We did talk about Twitter and basically blocking off access for the API and basically putting on all these restrictions on the scraping. I watched this video where this guy, I forgot exactly which video it was, but he was talking about the paywall internet, and this is what kind of inspired this part of the video or the stream. He was talking about how now Google is planning on deleting accounts that are inactive for 2 years. Basically, your whole database of information is just going to be wiped out. Like if you have a relative maybe that died, 2 years later, that's going to be gone if you can't sign in, or like, whatever it is, or maybe you just go into a coma or go to prison, or I don't know what it is, but it could be whatever. That's basically going to happen to you. Apparently Twitter was planning on archiving, like, I don't know necessarily what's in place now and not, but this was from a recent video. Twitter was planning on archiving accounts not used for 30 days. Like that, like just straight up, if you don't use an account for 30 days, it's archived. I guess you could re-access it, but it's strange. I guess Elon really wants active users on his platform. He's kind of like clamoring right now to get more people to do stuff. And if you actually saw, he was like doing that whole thing where he was like paying people now, as far as like, you can subscribe to a tweeter and then you can also get money from ad revenue, and it's actually increasing in as far as the money you can get from that. But basically another form of, these tech platforms, what they're doing to kind of erase content, for, I guess, their gain. Imgur is deleting old content. And then this one that wasn't necessarily the firm itself, but Internet Archive, I believe, was being sued by some publishers. And basically their claim was that, you don't really have a right to keep this on here. Your stuff needs to not infringe on our copyright or whatever it is. So, it's getting a lot harder to kind of use this centralized version of the internet that's been established, kind of like, where all these paywalls are. Like, it's not necessarily the entire internet. It's just that the most front-facing stuff, like people are looking stuff up on Google and finding results that are Reddit, Quora, Twitter, Facebook, like these few things as the front things of their page. So these things that are the most front-facing to normal people are like kind of just getting really, not necessarily even hard to use, but yeah, hard to use. But then also it's just really stifling creativity and inspiration, or I should say innovation on the internet.
Yeah, the Internet Archive thing, especially because I believe I'm familiar with that story. I'm pretty sure what happened was they purchased copies of books, and then they would let you read the books, but they would only let a number of people read the books that was equal to the number of copies of that book that they own. So they said they were operating like a library, because if you went on the website, you were just checking out the book. So that's a really interesting case. I'm hoping that they win in court on that, because it seems like they have a chance to. And the other ones, I mean, Twitter, I think a big part of it is old accounts that are abandoned are a lot of the times able to be hacked and turned into bots. Their accounts people don't care about. They probably have some junk password. And, you know, getting access to those accounts allows you to build an army of bots on social media without, you know, having to go through the normal CAPTCHA verification process. Same with Gmail, because a lot of spam comes from emails, especially compromised email accounts. So those moves, I don't think, are as bad or nonsensical as they may seem at first, but there's certainly some negative side effects to deleting grandma's email, like you were talking about.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate that, you know, it's happening in this manner, just because, you know, like that would affect accounts, like you said, like, you know, like grandma's account or whatever, but it would affect normal users. It's not just something that's going to affect those inactive accounts. It's not necessarily like they're looking specifically for those and then taking care of those. It's like, you know, basically pretty much anybody that falls under that qualification is being affected.
Yeah, definitely painting with a broad brush there.
Yeah. So just in general, pretty much I still wanted to go on about paywalls. Again, like the most accessible parts of the internet have had like homogeneous server infrastructure and paywalls established. Like basically, like, you know, and Twitter is another example of this, because like Elon's basically saying like now you have to become verified if you want access to a certain number. Like he was saying back with the rate limits, like you can, if you're verified, you can read more tweets than a person that isn't verified. Or I don't know if that's still the case, but, you know, basically like verification, like verified accounts can now download videos on Twitter apparently, or they will be able to. They're getting a lot more privileges, and obviously, you know, he wants to make money, so that's kind of the thing there. But you're kind of seeing like a limited use when you're not now paying for a social media site that before you didn't really have to. You're seeing that with a lot of other things as well, like, you know, just on the internet. I guess subscription models, as far as like, you know, streaming services is another example I could pull up for that. There are many streaming platforms, not necessarily many corporations, not necessarily many of those, but there are a lot of platforms to stream on, and there is a lot of content that they want to make sure they have the only access to, so that you're paying for that. Whereas, you know, I think it's called the Flixer.tv. I believe that's the website. You can get your free stuff. You can stream some free movies on there. I'm just, you know, I would never do that myself. I would never tell anybody to do that. But the Flixer.tv, I believe it is. And you can get some, I'm not saying you, but, you know, a criminal would get his movies on there. And I can't believe that this is happening today. I need to testify in front of Congress.
It's absolutely awful. It's horrible. And my heart goes out to all of the Hollywood executives who are wiping their tears away with less money than before. But I might be in the minority here, but I am perfectly fine with an internet that's more based off of a subscription model than off of an ad revenue model. I'm more comfortable paying money to those servers than being hacked all over the place. Did my webcam just disappear for a second?
Yeah, you broke up for a second on there. You were just saying you're fine with a subscription model compared to an ad revenue model.
Because I don't want to be stalked all the time by Google and Facebook.
Okay.
I had to, when I came onto this site to get on a video call with you, I had to enable JavaScript for it because I have that automatically disabled because I don't like being stalked. So I'm much happier just, I'm a hypocrite because I'm not paying for Twitter, but there's not really a value prop there.
So I do know that Google is basically moving toward more AI automation, or I guess, you know, like more AI functionalities when it comes to their ads. Google Ads is basically saying like, okay, well, here, we're going to start playing around with headlines from using your website copy and stuff that people are searching to essentially formulate headlines that most appeal to a user individually. And a lot of what they're saying is like basically using the AI to do this will remove a lot of the need to actually track people like at their every step in order to do this. Though I'm kind of skeptical that they'll just stop doing that, because having that much information really is valuable to them. And I mean, also to the government, it is valuable, and the government would like to get that information at any time they need to. So to say like, okay, well, these corporations are just going to stop doing that, I think that might be a problem if the government's like, well, we kind of want that information.
Google Edward Snowden Prism. Yeah, I don't see them ever giving up on that.
Right.
But again, I don't mind anything that stops me from being tracked as much as I am by major corporations on the internet. So.
Okay, so what's up, Ignis? I believe I have the program architecture for a true AI based upon pattern recognition of perception and memories toward action. The Antichrist cometh. Okay. Pattern recognition. I don't know, man. That was a little skeptical or sketchy. You know, that's a little. I don't know if you're allowed to have that on AI. Come on, that's a little racist.
He's got a Chad Doge PFP. He might be onto something.
No, he comes on my show. He's cool. Let's see. So, and actually he got, he's less willing to be edgy than I am. If you watch the streams, he's not as much of a fan as that, but you know, he jokes. Yeah. So I wanted to talk as well about neural nets. Honestly, what are they? Cause I looked up a video on what neural nets are. I'm still not exactly getting it, but from what my idea of it is that basically these are AI models. Let's see. Bro, that's what AI does. That's what a neural network does. Let me explain what I thought a neural network is, because I was going to say that. I was going to say, like, basically you're getting the advanced training of an AI model. Like that's basically what, let's see, I will invest in this, Ignis. Cool. But yeah, no, I was basically getting this, that like, this is how they function. You basically, I saw something about, multiple networks basically that you would program, and then they would each like look at a pixel of an image and then report to other networks and be intersecting. I don't know, man. You explain it. What are neural nets?
Okay. Wow. Okay. So neural networks are the dominant architecture for AI systems right now. And the way they operate is they work on what is essentially a simplified mathematical model of kind of how human brain neurons work. So typically they're arranged sequentially, and each row feeds into the next. So the input set of neurons will see whatever it is you want it to respond to. So if it's for image recognition, then each neuron will get a pixel or something along those lines. And every single neuron in that layer will feed into the next layer, into every single neuron. And the information there is stored in what are called weights and biases. Weights are how much each neuron cares about what the last one said, and biases is kind of how much it wants to turn on. And you have, you know, millions, billions of these in a network that you train by effectively, you run something in it, see what it says, do some fancy calculus to figure out how wrong it is through what's called backpropagation. You figure out how wrong-ish each neuron is, and then you change them by that much. And if you do that enough times on enough data, eventually the network begins to respond properly to the inputs going into it. So it's a way of kind of trying to mimic the way a brain works.
Yeah.
And shape it by changing it in the direction of being correct gradually.
Okay. So what are the capabilities really here with this? And I assume many, right? But I like sort of, you know, what is there access to now that there wasn't before because of these capabilities?
Yeah. So neural networks aren't new. What's new is the computing power to run massive ones,
Right.
like on the order of billions. And I mean, I don't even know where to start with the capabilities, because basically anything where you have an input and you want to get an output that relates to the input, you could theoretically do with this technology. I mean, you can do image recognition, you can do text generation, you can find the best fit line for a mathematical equation with it. I mean, that's what the simplest ones can do. It's it's a lot.
Yeah. Is there any capability here? I mean, I would assume that, yes, but like basically to create your own, the way I heard it put, I think this was by Esso, was create your own localized instance. And I think he was talking about like your own sort of server, or your own version of like the internet basically that you'd have.
Is there a way I can, was this in chat? Is there a way I can see the chat?
Oh, no. This was like on one of the streams that we were talking about. That's what the phrasing he used was, I believe. But like, is there like, I think he was just basically saying it's a way that like you can have your own version of the internet, like being built.
Yeah, large language models. He's in the chat, right? We can just
ask him. He's not here. That's another guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is Ignis. This is my, like, this is the other guy. This is one of my co-hosts.
Okay.
Yeah. I wish I could clarify on that, but I suppose is there a general like sort of ability that you would see here with that, like something similar, like in that range?
Yeah, I mean, you can run neural networks on your computer, especially if you have a GPU. They benefit greatly from.
Zach is saying like a federated server.
That might be that would
okay.
make sense.
Yeah,
that was
actually I think it is. Yeah, because he was also talking about like social media as well.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about with Mastodon and the Fediverse.
Yeah.
You can spin up your own instance of a Mastodon server and start saying, "Hey, server over here, you want to trade some posts?" And I haven't done it, but I hear it's relatively simple to do. You just have to have a computer, you have to have the internet, and you have to have somewhere to put all your, like a hard drive to put all your data in, and then
okay, I see. Yeah, so I also wanted to talk about like, getting into this sort of, and it kind of applies to the whole Mastodon thing, becoming uncensorable online. And we kind of, I brought this phrase up to you and you weren't exactly sure what I was talking about. I said running a protocol, and this might be the exact same thing we were just talking about here. But you said it had to do with like decentralized social media as well. I guess this is the same thing. But like sort of, is there any other way you can sort of avoid being censored online? I know there's VPNs and such, but what are the prospects on anti-censorship?
Prospects good. So
me good, you bad.
What I think you were talking about was something along the lines of the Fediverse and these standardized protocols for communicating between different social media servers, and being able to plug in to other networks while also hosting your own, so you can't get taken down from your account, just blocked from other people seeing you. Like you said, I mean, there's also VPNs, there's alternative webs like Tor and I2P. There's a number of ways. I mean, install.
Haven't you said that the feds were involved in Tor?
Huh?
Haven't you said that the feds are involved in Tor?
Yeah, but you're not going to get targeted by the feds on Tor.
Okay.
They're to the extent that the State Department or Pentagon has compromised Tor, they're going to use it for enemies of those entities, and those are the entities that are alleged to have substantial involvement in Tor. I've also heard people say that I forget which, it was either the CIA or FBI. I heard people say that they run exit nodes, which are the part of the Tor network that connects you to the outside world, which, being in that position, would allow you to see more of the encrypted content, but I'm not sure to what extent that's true.
Okay. Is there really an ability to read like the encrypted stuff when it comes to messages? Like, let's say like with WhatsApp, like are there ways to access those?
Kind of.
Okay.
So if the device is compromised, then the messages are decrypted on your phone. And so you can grab those from memory or, from storage if it's stored unencrypted. And the other concern there that's starting to become a concern is quantum computers and the ability to decrypt encrypted content. I talked in Florida a little bit about Store Now, Decrypt Later, which is programs where governments are just vacuuming up as much encrypted data as they can with the intention that once they achieve the ability to decrypt it with quantum computers, they're going to work their way through. Again, that kind of thing is like nation state actor level stuff. I don't anticipate that being used until quantum compute is very, very cheap on, political radicals. But there's also, I mean, we're already moving into quantum safe encryption algorithms. So there's not going to be a world where there's quantum computers that can crack encryption and you have no way to keep your files secure. There's always going to be encryption that will defend against the best computers.
So Zach said that there's really some messed up stuff on Mastodon servers. I could have imagined that, yes. And I was actually going to ask you about this, but I didn't know exactly how to phrase it. But I could imagine that the stuff, I mean, aside from maybe gore, could be some abuse material.
Yeah, I luckily have not witnessed any of that during my time on Mastodon. I was only active there for like a couple of weeks when it first came onto the scene. Yeah, I mean, that's something that is a negative side effect of decentralization, is that it becomes harder for good actors to shut down material like that. I think that the solution is largely not federating with those servers, and then, I hate to say it, but report it to the feds. That's their domain, not Mastodon's. But
yeah, well, I mean, it's sort of like the same question as asking what the implications are of, anarchism or just not having a government regulating anything. It's like, well, what do you do then? I mean, yeah, not incorporating with these people. I mean, if you do know them in person, you probably may want to do something about that in person. But, overall, like, what are the implications to the internet in general being decentralized, right? And I mean, I think we're getting into that, but does it really outweigh the benefits overall of having a centralized internet, right? Like, I guess that's another question you need to ask yourself, because like, oh, well, I mean, you're stopping content necessarily from being spread. That's bad. But at the same time, everybody has to give up their privacy and you're basically screwed over when it comes to being free on the internet.
yeah, that's a heavy question. And the way I would think about it is not in terms of black and white, the decision between absolute internet centralization and absolute decentralization, because neither of those are achievable. In the current world, obviously, there are uncensorable networks that people can go on and do bad things. Decentralizing other parts of the internet doesn't, to my estimation, substantially increase that risk. And so I think marginally it's pretty easy to say that the benefits outweigh the detriments, because the detriments aren't increasing by much. That material is already out there. It's already accessible to people who go look for it.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to talk about on here today was intellectual property. And this is one of the ones that I was excited about because I hate intellectual property. It sucks. But one of the examples I gave you when you were asking me about this was one thing like image generation. And basically people have the ability to pull from many images that they source from. And the artists are basically saying, oh no, I own that. But they don't really, right? They don't really own that. So you're able to pull from all these things to create new images. And you're basically saying, well, I created this. This is, my art. What I'm thinking here is that with this ability to sort of repurpose people's things, it's kind of putting a damper on the ability to, sort of, IP isn't Properties Act. It's kind of putting like, I guess, a damper on the ability to enforce AI enforce IP. Sorry. I think it'll get to that. And I also think it'll, like, right now, just sort of like make it, I guess, harder socially to say like, oh, well, this is a legitimate thing. Basically like looking at it and saying like, oh, well, this is actually their art. It's like, well, I mean, look at the capabilities of technology. It's not really your idea.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I am going to take here an enlightened centrist position that I think will appeal to both my friendly anti-intellectual property fanatics and to kind of the average person, which is that when you're training AI models on content, pictures, text, whatever it is more analogous to you consuming the content and learning from it than it is to, just ripping it and hosting it on a server somewhere. So I think that using data that you legitimately own, like you have the right to go on Twitter and look at people's art pages. You have the right to, watch a movie, and you have the right to gain some of that knowledge. You have the right to, try to mimic somebody's artwork, to learn from it and get a little bit better yourself. That should also apply to AI systems because they're not duplicating, they're learning. And I think that there's actually, US copyright law gives really broad authority to courts on when to enforce it based on the nature of the use of the content. And so this is something that the courts could handle entirely without Congress getting involved, is to say, for the purpose of copyright law, AI is a mind and it is able to consume content as long as it's possessed legitimately. You don't have to have the rights to reproduce it, to train an AI on it. And so I advocate for them doing that. I think that that's the right way to go.
It's funny that you said like, oh, well, it's good that they have this broad ability because then they could do that. Me, on the other hand, I was like, holy shit, they have this broad ability. They can make it so that this is
No. You gotta hear me out here. A lot of the exemptions are carved out explicitly. The courts have broad authority to say copyright law doesn't apply here. And that's a good thing.
I see. Well, the thing is, on your other point, that basically like this is as if a human were looking at it and learning from it. Even though I don't think like even if there's no addition made or no sort of like like editing of the photo itself, that is theft if you just download it or if you download a movie or whatever it is, right? I have no concern for this, but I actually think you actually like bring up a great point, and I think this is a good argument for people that don't view it that way and for some reason think it's legitimate. But again, like that mindset that it is can only really be challenged with something like this, I believe. And I actually do think that is a pretty good way of viewing it. And if somebody starts telling me about it, I'll probably have to use that argument first to see what their reaction is to that.
Yeah, I also, on the topic of copyright law, one of the concerns is it serves the purpose of centralizing AI, because if all the content on the internet is presumed copyrighted, you don't have to file for a copyright. You just have a copyright by virtue of producing something. The only people who are going to be able to amass enough data to train a state-of-the-art AI are people who have the resources to either have the lawyers to fight off these people or to acquire the rights to all the content they want to train on. And that leaves the little guy completely in the dust. There's no chance of ever competing. So for the sake of competition in AI, we have to make sure that by simply trying to innovate and create new models, you are not putting yourself at risk of copyright violations.
Copyright violations. What a term. Yeah, but did you have anything else on copyright? Because I knew that was something that you were telling me about before the stream that you were really interested in.
Yeah, that's really the crux of it.
Okay.
And I guess the other point about it is, even large corporations with a lot of resources, it's hard to 100% screen your content to make sure none of it's copyrightable. Like, it really hard. There's no central database of what's copyrighted and what's not. There's no, guarantee of data publication when you get something. You don't know if it's in or out of the copyright window. It's hard when you're vacuuming up that much data. And by stifling even the large corporations and doing that, what you're doing is you are risking giving up the lead to, entities like, I'm just going to say China as an example, who, if they develop this technology and get approaching the level that US companies are at, man, if you're worried about AI safety with ChatGPT, wait till you see what happens when China has a model that powerful. They're not going to, train it to not tell you how to make meth. They're going to, I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
They're gonna do bad things with it, right?
Okay.
And so we don't want to live in a world where, you know, we're too cautious or too caught up with intellectual property stuff that we just see the industry to China or somebody who's going to be worse than an imperfect system in the US.
Well, I mean, you're basically saying that China would accelerate in its technological advances at this quicker, or that, you know, I mean, because they would have already have access to it now, no?
Well, China doesn't care if they're violating U.S. copyright law.
Right.
Like, what are you going to do about it? I don't think this is a super near-term concern because they're still quite behind on GPUs, which are the most important piece of hardware for actually training or inferencing on AI. But that advantage isn't necessarily going to last forever. So we should not be slowing ourselves down just because we're ahead.
So you're saying the U.S. should be sending GPUs to Ukraine and then ChatGPT on top of that, giving them in flash drives.
Did you see Palantir is actually building AI systems to direct the military? So
Really?
like, yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked super into the details of it, but they're basically making AI generals is what they're working on.
Okay. Well, you know, that's how it goes, I guess. You know, what is the state going to be run by AI at some point more and more, like as far as how things can be run most efficiently? Well, I don't think it would be better. I think we would be in a worse position.
It depends on who created the AI. But I mean, how do you get worse?
But what I'm saying is that no matter what state uses it, it's always going to be AI telling the state how to run things more efficiently.
We need to train the AI on Rothbard.
If anything, you know, again, like, you know, it would sort of give it the economic ability to say, well, here's what the least we can do is so we have the most to tax afterward.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you need like a GPT that's like giving it the wrong instructions the whole time on what to do.
I don't know. I mean, the effects of something like that are really dependent on, you know, who trained the AI, who decided what information went into it. And so it's hard to make a judgment on would an AI run state be better or worse, because maybe it's a based AI.
Yeah, but like the problem I'm thinking here is that like the input itself would be, you know, sort of like what there's going to be a human behind that, and a human's going to be putting in an input saying like, well, how can I get the most tax revenue possible without crushing the economy completely, right? And then you see, like, okay, well, here's how I can maximize economic predation.
Yeah, that would be bad. I was thinking more of like
GPT runs the entire government without any person.
What?
You were saying like, well, you were thinking it's like, well, you said Rothbard or what?
Yeah, I was thinking like you just make a super intelligence with the temperament of Murray Rothbard, and
well, then it would destroy itself. What would it would shut itself down.
It would, yeah, and that would
maybe not even the government. It would just shut itself down. It would just off itself.
I mean, look, half of our senators are currently turned off, so.
Whoa, what does that mean? Pause.
I'm just saying, like, these people are not fully functional. I don't know if you've been
like Mitch McConnell.
Dianne Feinstein just gave power of attorney to her daughter because she can't handle her own personal life.
Wait, she gave her what?
She gave her daughter power of attorney over her.
Interesting, but you know what's so what
now because she can't handle it herself.
Yeah, but you saw the Mitch McConnell thing, right? Obviously,
I saw the Mitch McConnell thing.
So what? He's having a seizure there.
I don't know what happened. I mean, it didn't look good.
No. Well, it looked good for me.
You can't be saying stuff like that, man.
Okay. Well, you know,
I
have nothing to add to that, honestly.
Just loss of. I wish no ill will on anyone.
Okay. Well, I still don't know what to say to that. If there's anything to add, I'll let you say that. I'll let you have your moment of peace there with that. And you know, formally, the last thing said on this show is that you wish no ill will on Mitch McConnell. So that's what the show is left off with right now.
Can I live off on one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
We're so back.
That's it. That's it. But okay, overall, thoughts, any sort of thoughts on the episode, or just AI in general, the future of work, anything, you know?
Man, I mean, that was pretty good. That covered most of what I've been thinking about from our conversations. Subscribe and like.
Thank you. Yeah, there you go. Actually, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter, Dylan CV Dean.
I put your X/Twitter link in there. Sorry, I cut off your bio.
Dylan CV Dean, I'll be there.
I cut off your bio for Twitter. I started saying that I put your Twitter link in the description and just like cut you off. What do you post on there?
I argue with people.
Nice. Okay, well, guys.
I'm really angry.
Well, guys, it's been great. Thank you for coming on. I hope to have more conversations with you in the future. I think this was actually pretty good. I'd hope to have SO on maybe even with you. I'm not sure, like, because if you've seen like the podcast I sent you that I did with him, he brought up some interesting points. And though you did have your own opinions on how that would actually turn out, I think it would be good to have a more in-depth conversation on that and kind of get where he's coming from on a lot of this, because I think he would have a lot more to add to this conversation. But aside from that, I do appreciate you coming on. Did you have anything else to say? Because it looks like you still want to say something before I wrap up.
No, I'm just fidgeting. I gotta go to the bathroom.
Oh, okay. I get you. Well, I'll let you do that. Remember, guys, that civil offense is the key to winning. Thank you.
All right.